Welcome to Roadworthy-ish. In this episode, I'm going to be making some low control arms. This car is basically stock up front, so it has a problem with the old worn bushings, so everything can still move around. So it's really hard to get it set like I want. Also pretty hard running it in the width that I need with these over fenders. So for that, we need to make lower control arms to get the wheels out where we want them. And these are some big sticky boys we put on here, so we don't have any clearance. It should be okay. Should be if we just make longer, lower control arms. So I'm gonna cut them, lengthen them the way it should be done, and fit them back on the car. Also, we need the front tension rods to be redone. They're completely stuck with rust and all sorts of crap from being 53 years old. So we're gonna do a new one with pulley bushings and heim joints and all that good stuff. And yeah, trying to get this front set up the way it should, so we can get the entire car tracked and aligned ish. Yeah, gonna need the steps. And then people ask, why is it made like a step and not like a ramp? This is for having different heights. If you need to work on something, if it's really low, then sometimes it's enough to get up on like this one. Then if it's a ramp all the way and just a final resting stop, it's pretty hard to stop halfway. This way you can feel the increments as you drive up, and you get some clearance for the steps. Yeah, take that, Vin Diesel. So much torque. This is gonna suck. Alright, for front tension rods, I have bought these guys, which are S13. And I basically bought them because I needed the heim and I needed this part. So these are really like dirt cheap. They're like 60 bucks, something like that. Then I have machined, get out of here. These guys, I have machined the bushings and I've made these brackets. And that is because these guys need to fit into this. This is how it will be mounted on the car. Well, sorry. Something like this. Actually, front, then the lower control arms here. You get the idea. This needs to go into the control arm, bolted on, and this will control, funny enough, where the control arm will sit and how far front and back the front wheel will sit in the wheel well. So far so good. So this needs, and this is a good snug fit because it needs to be. I have machined these guys, as I said, so that they will fit these brackets. I will be putting a bolt in, and this will go through on the car where we can't fit this because we do not have this bracket. We only have this type of bracket. And this is where these guys come in that I've machined. They will sit on the bolt as some sort of space. I don't know where, it doesn't matter. And this outer lip will fit into the hole that is on the car, both sides. Sandwich that up and put it put a bolt and some nuts on there, basically. Then we can adjust the length on the bolt, and we should be able to set it in the ballpark where we need it and adjust it afterwards using this. That is the idea. It usually never works like that, but yeah, let's go underneath the car and I'll show you. Alright, let's go down here and have a look what we're dealing with. So this is the stock tension arm mount, which goes through the body, as you see here. These rubber bushings, they are worn. And this nut on this piece of thread is so stuck that the last time we even set everything on fire, it didn't budge. So it will not go off if I use the Ugga. It's not really in a position where I can get to it. Also, it will just kind of resonate because of the rubber bushings, so that doesn't really work. Instead, you get the idea. Bolt through the two pieces I've milled, sandwiched in this guy somewhere here, and from that, this guy will go somewhere here, like, yeah, through here, something like that. We might need to drill some holes, we might need to cut these guys and lengthen them, all kinds of good stuff. I will do some measuring and we will see how much room we need. Also, as a bonus, the front tension rod here has been riding on this guy. That is really, really bad because that gives you a lot of bump steer. So whenever you drive and turn and that kind of stuff, you can just hear it rubbing. Also, the front does all kinds of funny stuff. That's really no bueno. So we need, in order to clear this, we need to put on we need to put on something to get this downwards, I think, to get the angle a little better, just like it is here, to get the clearance, because when the wheel is up in the wheel well where it needs to sit, right now you have a lot of clearance because of the coilover isn't positioned right. When you lower it down, this guy just goes into contact with this, just sitting there, so yeah, that's not good. Also, these bushings, I can totally see that now, they are worn, so we might need to do a lot of stuff to this front end. I didn't realize it was that bad, or I just didn't really look at it because I didn't want it to be so bad. Yeah, it's probably that one, but yeah, let's get it down, get a lot of measurements from where we need it to sit, and then from there we can figure out how much to cut on these guys, how much to put on, and all kinds of crap. So yeah, back at it, cutting stuff apart, and I thought I was done. got this thing off. This is the lower control arm. On the something like that on the left side. These bushings don't really seem so bad. I actually have a lot. I have a lot of new bushings. So we can change this one out if we want to. We can cut it and make it a Heim joint. We can do all sorts of things. And this is fairly new, I can see. So this has obviously been changed at some point, which is good. Which means that bushings and everything around here seems pretty solid. So it doesn't really have any slop. That is good. Otherwise, I do actually believe that I have a brand new set, either way, of stuff we can put in here. Yeah, this should fit the bill. I think if it's tall enough, it should be for this car. Made in Japan, it says, probably stamped in China. Doesn't really matter. 3.5. No, it could be Japanese parts. I don't know. Lots of fake crap going around for these cars. So many resto mod fake pieces. Also, now we have a chance to shave off the bump stop to give it a little bit more lock, as much as the original steering linkage will allow it. But game plan is, let me just twist this out of the way. As you saw in the A86, this will be cut basically here. Cut them here. You add a piece in that will fit the profile. When that is done in the width that you need to expand it, then it's welded all the way up. Then you make some sort of bracketry that will go in here with a hole so that you can access all this. Maybe a couple of holes, dimple holes, just for the looks, like we did on the A86. And then you weld that onto here. And that will make this very, very structural sound, as long as you can weld it properly. So, I don't know if I can do that. I never had one fail, and I have done a lot. So, let's get the old jig out. I have a jig for cutting lower control arms, because I've, again, cut a few and lengthened them. So, let's get the jig out, put it in there, and try to measure this thing up. And here it is. Basically, what you do is something like this. Pretty centered. And then you adjust it accordingly so that your cut will be 90 degrees in relation to this. Because that is where you need the cut. This is also the easiest way to make an insert that will fit. That is basically the idea. And we need to lengthen these guys about, the math says 20? Yeah. 20 millimeters. So that's not a lot, but still, in the world of fitment, 20 millimeters is quite a lot. Also, if you do this, lengthen these guys by 20 millimeters, you will have your strut towers will basically pivot out on the bottom. That will give you some negative camber. Some people think that's cool, but if it is for practical use, I'll allow it. Otherwise, it's just stupid. So now let's see if we can blow this stuff apart. Maybe put a little paint on here. Get this thing cleaned up and ready for cutting. And start cutting. Alright, me being an absolute retard, I cut this off and I'm gonna weld it onto the other side of the bracket of the jig, so that when we put it in the saw, in this saw, it will fit Not like the old saw I had, where it needed to be where I had it, but that's a long time ago. Yeah, so let's get this cleaned up and get this glued back on. Oh yeah. Still pretty hot. That hot. Let's just see if we can try and save this bushing. Ow, still hot. And with all this stuff in place, you gotta make enough room for your new welds without burning everything off. I might remove this, I might not. Let's see. I don't know if you can tell, but at this point, I just don't really care anymore. I just cut stuff up. Yummy. Clean, perfect-ish cut. And if you're stupid like me, remember to cool this thing off while you're cutting. Otherwise, this will be junk. Also, we will need, because these guys are just straight, as you can see, we will need to get these thingies cut. So in this cut, we're going to use this initial hole. In this cut area, we're going to have to drill another hole for this one. But I think first I'm just going to get it all back together. And then we're going to fit it on the car. We're going to fit these guys on the car. And then we're going to go and have a look at how this will fit and how we need to drill this. Now this is cut. And we can use this as a reference, put the other piece in and cut it. We will have to cut the exactly same place. I think I'll just get all the other stuff off the car. I'm gonna need some fresh air in here because I'm really dying. So I'm gonna air this out, get the other stuff off the car. Then when we have the other one in hand, get this thing off, throw the other one on there, do the same. And then try to keep the correct pieces together. Probably screwed that up too, so yells. Alright, that cut being done, I know that this material is 2 millimeters, and for the bottom piece, which is gonna be almost full length of this thing, I am thinking about doing this in a 4 millimeter, and what that will do is to add a lot of rigidity once we've cut all the unnecessary material away and made some dimple holes and all that good stuff. It's just gonna give a lot more strength than this ever had. And then the insert, the piece that we are going to be putting in between here, is gonna be a 3 millimeter, because that will allow me to put on a lot of heat, a lot of penetration when we weld this, and it is gonna last. I have made a lot, and I think the longest one I ever made was 55 millimeters lengthened, something like this. That's a lot of pressure to put on this piece when it's lengthened 55 millimeters, but it never failed and it was driven pretty hard. So let's just get all this stuff mocked up and cut out and get ready to weld it back together. And then we can see what we're gonna do with the tie rods. one hell of a mess later. These two guys are made, which are going to fit like this. So this is the first idea of how this is going to look. So when you are at this point, you need to clean up all your parts because you need very, very strong weld. Also this stuff, this is from inside, some strengthening that was placed in here, and that is just spot welded on with 1 or 2 spot welds. So do not weld with that still in there. Get it out, because you also need, if you're doing like I'm doing, the geometry, this is going to come in like this, it's going to be off. So you're not using the holes like this. You are going to use another hole that you're going to be putting in your extension piece. So make sure that the rear hole is cleaned up and ready to be welded. I have a few plugs that I'm going to put in there and weld. But for now, let this stuff up and start with welding it on this arm. This will give you the best idea of how it sits. Start with the top and then move to the sides, and then you can finagle this, put it in the shape you want, and then when it's all tacked up, you make sure that you get a nice solid weld all around. And that is the foundation for the next piece. But this really needs some heat, and it needs some penetration. This needs to be like it was one piece. So if you're not comfortable with welding it, get some help, because you don't want this piece falling off when you're doing 70 on the freeway. So get it done right or get help. So I'm gonna weld all this stuff up now and see if I can do it right. Get it cleaned off, and now this is 20 millimeters longer than the stock one. So now we can start measuring out for our bottom piece. And I recommend that you do it full length from the bottom all the way back, from before the mounting point all the way up to here where it kind of tapers off, because that is the piece that you can weld on with the best adhesion. When you get up here, it's a little bit harder. Also, you can service the car if you weld this stuff up. Then you can't get to this joint and change it if you need to. So make sure that you leave a little room for that, but go all the way up to where it tapers inwards. Basically, lay it on the metal that you want to use. Something like that. Then when this is cut out, then we can start positioning the holes that we need, because we're gonna need an access hole to tighten the bolts. Alright, new lower control arm is on the car. So now it is 20 millimeters wider in the front. All the stuff will still line up like it should, but we're not gonna need this. So let's get to applying some violence and getting this thing off. Alright, so after a lot of cutting, being careful not to cut the mount, I finally got this thing off. And this is what's left. All this crusty goodness. It was almost rusted through anyways, so that would have been dangerous. Bushings, they have never been changed. And I understand why they didn't get this off, because these nuts are... these nuts... these nuts are just on there, so yeah. But this, compared to what is going to be fitted to the car, is just day and night. So next step is to fit these guys, to sandwich them in between the mount that held this before, bolt through it, and then we can mark up where we need to drill the new lower control arm. Alright, that was some of the messiest cutting work I've ever done, getting this thing off. Yes, but now we have the new bracket in place, which basically sandwiches in between here. As you can see, the bolt that you can space out if you need to onto the bracket, and it needs to be spaced out a little bit to make room for the new bolt and nut. And then we can adjust it however we want, longer or shorter. And I think I will be lining it up. The length doesn't really matter right now. This is just to get it on the car. Then it will be set up so that the first one will go into the initial first hole that will be re-drilled to fit, and the other one we need a new hole for that. Once we've drilled that, we will plug up the old hole here, and then we will make a reinforcement piece that will go underneath with the holes that will tie all this structure together. These things cut and holes punched, we need to dimple them. That will give it some structural strength, and then we need to fit it to our lower control arm. Right now these three holes are just weight reduction, and when you dimple them it gives a lot of strength to it, but this big one is to make sure that we can take this 19mm top and access the tie rod bolts underneath. Also, we need to make room for the 12mm bolt for this guy, and that is a little bit off to where it normally sits, because normally you will have them clustered so that you will have access to all three. But now that we have put on this S13, which is straight and not angled like this, then you get them spread out a little bit more apart. It doesn't matter. This will fit. This will be bent to fit, and we will make a little access hole right here. When that's all done, we will make these reinforcement pieces to fit just like there is one originally. Remember, we took that off. We'll make this fit down here, so this will tie into the existing control arm on both sides and the new added piece. So that will tie it in from underneath. This will kind of brace it so that it can't move around the edges here. And as I said, I never had one fail, and I have made some that were extended more than this is 50mm. So I'm not worried at all. It's just a lot of work to do it like this, and I've seen a lot of guys weld stuff on the sides and all kinds of stuff, but I think the most important part is to keep the top and the bottom sandwiched in together. That's why we use these guys, because that gives a whole other strength to it when we box it in. Otherwise it has potential to break along these welds, because this will see a lot of, not necessarily flex, but there will be a lot of strain on this that you will reduce by putting this bottom piece on. So yeah, let's get this apart, clean it up a little bit, drill this reinforcement plate to fit, and make room for the last 12mm bolt. That should conclude the fabrication work. Yeah, so far. And we have to make, I just forgot, we have to make tie rods. The tie rods are too short now. So we have to make something to make them longer, or yeah, there's no workaround. We have to make them longer. So yeah, forgot that part. Always something. Alright, that is the reinforcement piece put in. The original hole that we're not going to use has been plug welded. Alright, cleanup done. This is looking good. Everything works. Dimples. Always save these outer conical roller bearing shells. They can be used when you dimple hole stuff like this. You can just use a random socket top, something like this, and then you just choose your inner diameter, set it up for that, and make sure that you have some room for it. Then you actually just set it up like this, center it as good as you can, and then just press it down a little bit. That will dimple it. Not the, you can also use and buy dimple tools, but this is really quick, especially on stuff like this. If it's visible, like interior parts and part of the cage, I would probably use the dimple tool. But for this is just light work, and it's really easy and fast. So punch that out, and then you're gonna be, then you end up with a piece that is totally bent. You have to bend it back into shape basically, but the dimples will remain and it will have a lot more rigidity and strength. So that is and just like that, faster than you can set up the dimple tool, you can just dimple stuff like this, have it done. Now I'm gonna do the biggest one, and then we're gonna have to straighten this out. Yeah. This is how the finished piece ended up. Now I'm just gonna finish it so it looks nice. Get the edges as straight as possible. And then I think we need to shorten it just a bit. Make sure the dimples are facing inward, because that will give the biggest strength to this. That's pretty much it. So now I'm gonna adjust the length. Clean everything up, especially around here where we need a really strong weld, and finish this off, welding it and then giving it a last once over so that it is clean. Then we can put some paint on this, and that will be one side done. And that's it. Welded up and cleaned off with full access for everything we need to access. Lightweight, very strong and sturdy. Lengthened lower control arms. Now the only thing left to do is to get this cleaned out a little bit better and give it some paint. First impressions, good. Now it has a wider stance. It's still not all the way out where it needs to be, but I think when I get the RCAs on, the roll center adjusters, it will, right now the front lower control arm is pivoted upwards. When it gets out being straight, it will, funny enough, reach more, and that will bring out the wheels, the last piece that we need. Otherwise than that, we can just adjust it with some small spacers. That being said, the anti-roll bar, the front arm, nothing is hitting either the frame or each other. So huge win. Also, it's a bit cross-eyed now. I just did the initial alignment of measurements I took before we took it apart. I just added what I added to the lower control arm, and that is not how you do it. So this is just basically set up. It doesn't fit, not at all, not yet. But now it's time to get it outside and pull out the big breaker bars or some wood or whatever and try and align it. We'll do that front to back, because the rear wheels should be pretty straight as much as they can be. We're gonna make all this stuff in the rear adjustable as well, but right now the front is what matters. So this is very, very forward, this wheel, compared to the other one. I only have like 1/8 of an inch of clearance from the over fender to the wheel, and a lot of clearance in the back. So we need to move it backwards. I might even do that now before we move it outside, because I don't want this to rub, and as soon as I turn the steering wheel, I think this is gonna catch. So back up again, lengthen this arm just a bit, enough to get it centered ish, and yeah, let's try and take it from there. I don't know if you can tell, but the stance in the front is much, much better. It is still not all the way out. That is going to be fixed when we do some of the other stuff, but this looks bad ass. And just look at that result. The stance is now perfect. It is just what I wanted from this car. It looks so much better when the front wheels actually fill the arches. When I fit the RCAs we'll be building, the lower control arms will have another angle, so the wheels will be further out. And from there, it's just about adjusting, getting it all the way aligned, getting some spacers on, getting the wheels all the way out, just like we have in the back, and then again, setting the height so that everything looks spot on. But so far, this has been a huge win, so thank you so much for watching. Remember to subscribe if you want to see more, and I will see you on the next one.